to do things.
How about healthcare reform, the other most debated, talked about topic in government during the past year?
Well, I guess the way I'll address that is, it would be also great. Like I work at a soup kitchen every week, and we feed people, and the whole idea is that you could say it would be a great thing, and it's certainly very possible for the United States to provide food to everybody. Like we obviously could even really feed the world with all the farmland that we have here. That's not the question. The question is what happens when you involve the government and say, okay, everybody's entitled to free food. Like we could, amend the Constitution, say everyone gets free food. The problem is that what will very quickly happen is the people that are producing it will decide not to produce anymore because they can just get it free from somebody else. And I think that with the federal health care plan, I think that if you're going to have workable solutions, it's going to be best to do it on a local and state level. I view a federal health care plan as being very dangerous because of basically it's a one-size-fits-all type solution, and I honestly don't think it's going to work. I think the two worst things about the bill that I would work to compromise to try to remove is, number one is the mandate that all individuals have to pay a fine, or, obviously if you can't pay the fine, they'll put you in prison eventually, to enlist in this plan. I think that's unconstitutional. I don't think that people should have to buy into things. It's like the government trying to tell you what type of food or property insurance or any of these things to buy. I don't think the government has that role. And the second thing is really, the bill's put in place with some good intentions to help the poor and the middle class, but when you look at the labor laws that they are being changed, what it's doing is it's forcing the employers to actually pay a higher percentage of the payout to people that normally can't afford this insurance. And that's actually very dangerous, and I believe it'll actually devastate the poor and the middle class. And the reason that, the way that I'll do it is, if you have an employee that's making $40 or $30 an hour, it probably won't mean too much. But the jobs that are making less, say $10, $12 an hour type positions, what'll end up occurring with those is that the employer will be paying a higher amount, and these employees will go from being productive or profitable to being unprofitable, and the employers will eventually be forced to let these employees go. So those are the two key problems that I would see. I think that really must be addressed, and the rest of it. Overall, I don't believe in having the federal government involved with people's health care. I think that you have 50 state laboratories that could work on, and even on the local level, things will work out. But there's a lot of things that can be done, like the portability over state lines. On my website, I also outline, when you pay insurance in Pennsylvania, about 15 to 40% of your premium is going towards what's known as health care mandates that the state legislature of Pennsylvania has legislated, and those really need to be taken a very close look at. For instance, if you are a female, you might be paying for things such as testicular cancer, or baldness, which you obviously can't get. And if you're a guy, you might be paying for ovarian cancer and breast cancer, and that's the whole thing. Is like, I think that the more options that you have with healthcare, the better off we'll be. And also on the federal level, I would say that one of the key things that need to be done that both the Republicans don't address and the Democrats don't address is you need to destroy the healthcare cartel. We have a healthcare insurance cartel, and to believe that that some congressman or some congresswoman sat down and wrote the healthcare bill, which is 2,000 pages long, is ridiculous. It was written by those lobbyists, and it was written to secure their profits into the future, and I don't think that's good for the American people.
I have one question that was submitted by one of our readers. Kim Sheeler sent this question to Ask the Candidate, our Gmail account in which we're taking questions from people. She asks, do you support Representative Darrell Metcalfe and his House Bill 2479, Arizona modeled legislation that would allow state and local law enforcement to have full authority to apprehend Pennsylvania's estimated 140,000 illegal aliens?
Yeah, thank you. I would have to, that's obviously a state bill. I'm running for federal office, so I have to take a read at it. But what I can talk about is really the illegal immigration. And my view on that is, illegal immigration is illegal. But on the other hand, like, legal immigration was something that our entire country was founded on. Most of us that are here today came over at some point from immigration. But when it gets down to it, I think the two things to really what the government is actually doing is they subsidize illegal immigration. It's those things that need to be addressed first. Because again, I'm an engineer, so you have a problem. The first thing you do is contain it. The second thing is you look at the root cause, and then you look at the corrective actions to put in place. And to contain the problem, I think we need to do something that hasn't really been done since 9/11, which is to secure our borders. We haven't done that. We haven't secured our Mexican border, our Canadian border, and our seaports and airports really effectively. Number two is that the subsidies that illegal immigration has, for instance, birthright by citizenship, Congress is responsible for the naturalization laws federally, and I believe that when someone has a foreign national without an American parent has a child on American soil, they should not be granted American citizenship. They're still under the jurisdiction of whatever their home country is. That needs to be changed. Number two, and to me it's very common sense, but benefits that are paid for by the American taxpayer, by the government, to illegal immigrants that are here illegally should be removed. And these are things that, to me they sound very common sense. And I think that to do those things to kind of contain the problem that we have here first is the best thing to do in terms of when you start to get down into deportation and that sort of thing. You have to be very careful with the amount of cost that's there. And for instance, like Pennsylvania addressing it is quite a bit different than California. So to answer the question, I have to read the bill before I comment, but it's something very key to look at. And again, like alleviating the jobs program problem that we have that's caused by the government, I think that's the key thing to do, because when you remove that and we have a lot of jobs, then that'll also kind of cure up the problem that we currently have, because what we have in our country right now, unemployment locally is basically doubled from 5% to 10% over the last few years, the last couple of years. But when you actually look at the federal statistics, like the U6 statistic is about 17%, and they're dropping people off the statistic when they're unemployed for about 12 months. So when you work it all out, the real unemployment, which you can find by going door to door, is really probably about 20% rather than 10%, which is a depression era. And that's what we really need to address, is this institutional unemployment created by the government.
I have one last question for you. In the atmosphere in which you're running today, there's a lot of protests against government, known as the Tea Party movement. Do you think these people have a legitimate gripe, and where do you see us going as a nation in all of this flux that's going on right now?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And with the Tea Party, I think that some of the things there, like protesting against the bailouts, because if you go back to the very beginning of the whole movement, you had both. It didn't matter what party was out there. You had a lot of people protesting the corporatism that might have been registered Democrats, and you also had the Republicans out there that were just aghast at the government giving these money to these banks and corporations. And I'm not a Tea Party candidate, but what I do share with them is a sincere respect for following the Constitution and the rule of law. I also share a lot of their fiscal things, but where I try to come in is with a lot more solutions, and to try to move ahead from where we currently are and have a better future really for our for the next generation and everything. And I really think that what it gets down to it is, with any candidate, it comes down to cutting government spending. Like, we have 22.8 government bureaucrats in our country. It's the largest single job sector in the United States. The salary of federal workers, federal bureaucrats, is $71,000, which is about twice the median household income across the United States. I think that's something that needs to be cut down as well. And I think that any candidate that you ask these questions to, if they aren't willing to start with themselves, I think the voters should really just write them off. And what I've said is, I will not take the salary of a United States congressman is $174,000. I've said that what I'll only be taking is the median household income, which is in the mid-50s. The remainder of that I'll be donating to local nonprofit hospitals. So again, by healthcare, I'll be trying to, it's really taxpayer money, but I'll be giving it back into the local communities. I will not be accepting the federal health care plan. I believe it's too lucrative, and the Congress also gets a pension plan, which the incumbent is entitled to, that gives them up to 80% of their pay for the rest of their lives when they're out of office, which I also think is ridiculous, and I would not enlist in that plan. I would act to try and end those types of super lucrative pensions.
Okay, it's been very interesting talking to you. I think you've given us a lot of things to think about. Is there anything you would like to say in closing?
Well, thank you, and I humbly ask for the voters to vote for me on November 2nd, and to vote for an independent. Like, you have to realize that the parties themselves have betrayed the American people. They've lied to the American people, and the parties, I believe, have really let the American people down. And I urge people to go out and vote independent, because that's the only way, things are ever really going to change. And I think that economically, where our country's going, one of the key reasons that I should have also mentioned that I'm running is I believe that what we're heading for is a crisis with the dollar. I mean, the government can't just keep printing all this money, and I'm very concerned. We had this tech stop bubble, and a lot of that money and liquidity went into the real estate bubble, and people are kind of, there's nobody really talking about a bubble right now, but the bubble is in the sovereign debt market, and not just with the United States, is really globally, and with our paper currencies that really aren't backed by anything. And I think that one of the key things to also realize is that, when the government spends too much, the excessive federal spending is never going to be cured by more excessive federal spending. What we need is more individual spending money, not these governments which are basically just wasting most of our money. But thanks so much for your time, and I much appreciate it. And people can reach me at my website, which is towneforcongress.com, TOWNE forcongress.com. My phone number for the campaign is 610-392-8156. Voters are welcome to also call if they have any questions, and the email and everything is also on the website.